Hello everyone. In this video I will tell you about the Yemen crisis. There's a Middle East country called Yemen and there's a civil war that has been going on in the country Yemen for the past almost 6 years now. Although the proper escalation hit its peak in the year 2015 and for the past 2 years there has been a severe crisis. There's a war going on and now which started as a civil war, now there are multiple countries that are involved. So let's begin. Before I even begin, you should know where is Middle East and what is Middle East. So these countries that you see in the green color, they are the Middle East countries. They are also called the Gulf countries because this part, this oceanic part between here and here, that is Iraq, Iran and Saudi Arabia, this is called the Persian Gulf. That is why the countries around or surrounding the Persian Gulf are called Gulf countries also. So let's zoom in, and this is the Persian Gulf. So this is the powerful Iran, this is the powerful Saudi Arabia, this is Iraq, this is Syria, this is Jordan, and here we have Israel and other countries. This is our country of interest, which is Yemen, and this is Oman, this is UAE, United Arab Emirates, which is sort of a consortium of 7 emirates like Dubai, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi and so on. And here you have Qatar, and this is Bahrain. So this is what you call the Middle East. I'll zoom in. Here it's much better. This is Iraq, this is Iran, and this is Saudi Arabia. Please note that there has been a tussle going on for ages between Iran and Saudi Arabia because both of these countries want to control the Middle East. And wherever you see in the world, in all the continents, there is always a tussle for the supremacy. For example, in Asia, there is a tussle for supremacy between India and China. In South America, there is a tussle between Brazil and Argentina, and so on. So in Middle East, both Iran and Saudi Arabia, they want to gain supremacy and one-upmanship. That is why Iran and Saudi Arabia, they are eternal enemies or foes. And in Yemen war, both of these countries have a major role to play. So this is the Yemen. Now here in the diagram you see this southern part of Arabian Peninsula. This is Yemen, and I am zooming in on Yemen now. So Yemen is made from 6 provinces, and you can see these are colored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. These 6 provinces constitute Yemen. This is the northern part in yellow color, and this is the capital of Yemen, which is written like this. It is called Sana'a, and this is the southern town of Aden, and that is why this particular part of ocean, it is called Gulf of Aden. So here it is more clear. This is Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and this is Aden, and these are the 6 provinces which constitute Yemen. So it all started from the Arab Spring. Now what is Arab Spring? In the African countries and some Middle East countries, there was a call for democracy. Most of these countries where Arab Spring hit were ruled by autocratic rulers, and these rulers often were very corrupt. They oppressed people, and therefore there was a demand for democracy. It all started when this vendor who used to sell fruits, he lit himself on fire. He burnt himself. His name was Mohamed Bouazizi. And in December 2010, he burnt himself. And after his burning, there was a huge uproar and Arab Spring started. So first it started in Tunisia. And in Tunisia, the long-serving ruler, Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali, he was removed by the people. And there were efforts to instill democracy in all these countries. This is what we refer to as Arab Spring. It started from Tunisia and it spread to all the countries. It spread to Egypt, and Hosni Mubarak, who had been ruling Egypt for 29 years, he was thrown away. Libya, similarly, Gaddafi, he was thrown away. But one question I want to ask you is that all of these rulers who had been ruling for so long, they were very powerful. Was it very easy to throw them away? No, it wasn't. Therefore, all those who were rebelling were called rebels, and they got help from USA, UK. So USA, UK, France and these Western countries provided them with all the arms, ammunition and military advice so that they can throw these autocratic rulers away. Similarly, in the case of Libya, Gaddafi was killed with the help of USA, but more importantly UK and France, which helped the Libyan rebels arm themselves and take on Gaddafi. In a lot of African and Middle Eastern countries, there were concrete results, like the governments were thrown away. But there were some countries where there has been no result thus far, and it's 2017, such as Syria and Yemen. So in Syria, what happened? all those who wanted to remove Assad, who is the autocratic ruler in Syria. And again, America started supporting the rebels who wanted to overthrow Assad. But in turn, Russia started supporting Assad because Russia felt that America will gain a lot of influence over the African and Middle Eastern countries, because all those who are new to the throne now after the going away of the autocratic rulers are loyalists of the America, because it is with the help of America only that these rebels have been able to overthrow the established regimes. So in Syria, Vladimir Putin started supporting Assad, and therefore there was a proxy war between America and Russia. Now proxy war means that two countries which are hostile to each other, they don't engage in a direct conflict because nobody can afford it. For example, USA and Russia both have more than 4,000 nuclear warheads and cannot afford, neither economically nor militarily, to have a direct escalation. Therefore, there will be proxy wars like we saw in Ukraine between Russia and USA, where Russia was involved in a direct conflict with Ukraine and America was supporting the rebels. Similarly, in Syria, America was supporting the Syrian rebels and Russia was supporting the established regime. And similar was the case in Yemen. So this was all a byproduct of Arab Spring. Now let me come to Yemen in detail. So Yemen, there was first a civil war, that is the war within the two factions in Yemen itself. It was like a family fight, but later on it escalated on a large scale, so much so that a lot of countries got involved in it. So let me tell you what exactly happened. So in 2011, when Arab Spring was at its peak, people also wanted to throw away the government in Yemen also. Now the president of Yemen that time was Saleh. His full name is Ali Abdullah Saleh, but just remember Saleh. He is the guy, he was the president of Yemen. And he is the chief of army of Yemen that time. His name is Ahmar, Ali Mohsen al-Ahmar. So just remember Saleh and Ahmar. And there was a fight between Saleh and Ahmar because Saleh wanted his son, Ahmad Ali Saleh, to become the army chief. But of course, Ahmar resisted because he was the army chief and he did not want to lose his position. So what happened was that there was a confrontation between Saleh and Ahmar, and both started mobilizing their forces. Now a lot of people had taken to the roads, taken to the streets to throw away Saleh that time. And Ahmar, he started convincing these people that they will be protected, and also he wanted to win their loyalty. And same was with Saleh. He wanted to mobilize the movement in his favor. So Saleh versus Ahmar, it weakened the army of the country Yemen, because a lot of people in the army, they were loyalists of Ahmar and a lot were loyalists of the president Saleh. So this internal civil war started in Yemen, and the military became very weak because the two factions of the army, the Saleh loyalists and the Ahmar loyalists, were fighting between themselves. So the country became militarily very weak because of Saleh versus Ahmar. Now who took the advantage? It was the Houthi rebels. So he is the leader. His name is Abdul Malik al-Houthi. And who are the Houthis? Houthis are the people in Yemen who thought that they were neglected and there was no development for them, and they had full tribal support. So Houthis started gaining dominance. So taking advantage of a weak military because they were fighting among themselves, that is the Saleh faction and the Ahmar faction, Houthis started expanding their base, and Houthis are Shia. Yemen has a Sunni government. So first Houthis targeted the Shia dominant areas, which is the North Yemen. So the areas closer to the capital Sana'a, they are all Shia majority regions. So people were more sympathetic towards Houthis and they quickly expanded. Initially military ignored them because military was busy with infighting, and also they thought that Houthis will not be able to do much. They will just create nuisance and then they will go away. It is a very minor uprising, but they underestimated the Houthis. Now Iran came into the picture, and why? See, Iran saw it as a good chance to gain dominance in the Middle East, because Iran is a Shia country. So Iran started supporting the Shia group Houthis, and with the help of Iran, who provided Houthis with all the powerful arms, ammunitions. Not only that, Iran also supported the Houthi rebels with the naval vessels. So in the Gulf of Aden, there were various powerful ships that Iran parked so that readily arms and ammunition can be supplied to the Houthi rebels. Now I want to ask you one question. Why was Iran so interested in supporting the Houthi rebels, which were gaining dominance in the northern part of Yemen? Because Iran is an enemy of Saudi Arabia. So Iran wanted that on the northern front, Iran is trying to control Saudi Arabia, and if Iran gains any dominance in the southern part also, then Saudi Arabia will be cornered on both the fronts. It has to confront Iran in the north also and in the south also, and therefore Iran will be in a much better shape to take on Saudi Arabia, because Iran already has support of Hezbollah, which is again a Shia group based in Iraq, some part of Jordan and some part of Syria, which is confronting Saudi Arabia. Then in these small countries like Bahrain and Qatar, there are Shia groups which are pro-Iran, like the Qatifi group in Qatar and so on. These are the Shia groups. Even in UAE, but very less in UAE, though there are pro-Iran groups in UAE also. So on the entire northern front, Saudi Arabia is confronted. It is controlled by Iran. But on the southern front, it is unchecked. So Iran wanted to gain dominance in the southern part of Saudi Arabia so that it can take on Saudi Arabia from southern part also. And they saw it as a good opportunity to support Houthis. And also Houthis were Shia. So there was a kind of ideological matching between Iran and the Houthis. And the fight between Saleh and Ahmar continued. Now there was a turning point here. Since the fighting continued and Houthis started spreading themselves, Saleh realized that he is no longer in a position to beat Ahmar militarily, because military was also in support of Ahmar and some part was also in support of Saleh. So there were two factions and Saleh could not do it without external support. So he took the help of Saudi Arabia. Now Saudi Arabia was not interested in the domestic fight in Yemen, but why it entered into the fray was because it wanted to control the Houthis, because the spread of Houthis will mean that the spread of Iran, because Houthis are after all supported by Iran only. So they wanted to control the Houthi expansion, and in an unstable Iran, that was because of the fighting between Saleh and Ahmar, Houthis saw it as a good opportunity to spread themselves, to mushroom. So Saudi Arabia entered into the picture only because they wanted to control Houthis. So what Saudi Arabia did was, Saudi Arabia stepped in and it started supporting Saleh. So Saleh was supported by Saudi Arabia now. And therefore, what later happened was that Ahmar, he felt quite isolated, because he felt that Saudi, they are a big powerful country. So Saleh, he aligned himself with the rebels. And also Saleh, he tried to get Ahmar killed. How? So I'll tell you how. So Saudi Arabia had started bombing the Houthi areas after Saleh did a deal with them. So Saudi Arabia confronted Yemen and started air bombing on the Houthi regions to stop their spread. Now Saleh, he made a plan to kill Ahmar, who had been his long time enemy. And what he did was, he gave a misinformation to Saudi intelligence regarding the position of Houthis. So there was a headquarter where Ahmar used to sit. He told Saudi Arabia that this headquarter is a zone of Houthis, so that Saudi Arabia can bomb his headquarter and kill Ahmar. But Ahmar survived even after the bombing. And therefore now Ahmar realized that he is weak. So he started supporting, he aligned himself with the Houthi rebels. So now there were two factions. On one side there was Saleh, who had the support of Saudi Arabia, and on another side there was Houthi and Ahmar. And Ahmar had aligned with the Houthis rebels. So this was an all-out civil war in Yemen and lots of people were being killed. So as I said, there were two factions, Houthi and versus Houthis, who were backed by Iran, versus Ahmar versus Saleh. This is basically Ahmar is on the side of Houthi, so you can say Houthi and Ahmar versus Saleh. Now there was an agreement which was reached. That was reached by the mediation of Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia wanted to stabilize Yemen, because an unstable Yemen will invite Houthi spread. Therefore, there was an agreement reached that Saleh will step down as the president of Yemen, and so that there can be peace in Yemen, and Saleh agreed. So there was a temporary peace, but just when he was about to resign, he refused. He refused, and there were again protests erupted in Yemen and country again became unstable. Now there was a mosque attack. Saleh was praying in a mosque and there was a mosque attack in which all of his bodyguards were killed, but somehow he survived. But he suffered 40% burns. Almost 40% of his body was burnt. This is a picture right after the attacks where his body was burnt, and he became very weak. So in November 2011, he was forced to sign the agreement, peace agreement, which the Saudis had told him, but he had refused. Now he was not in a position to negotiate with the Saudis, so he signed the agreement and resigned. and he was very weak. He could no longer serve as the president. So the vice president of Yemen, Mansour Hadi, he took over as the president of Yemen in 2012. Now he is a very important person. Remember his name, Mansour Hadi. He is now the new president of Yemen. Now his first task was to stabilize Yemen because it was a war-torn country from civil war. So first step which he took was he relieved Ahmar from his duties. So Ahmar was no longer the army chief and he replaced Ahmar with another person called Mubarak. And he also started political and military stabilization of the country. He tried his best that there is a political and military stability in the country. But it was not very easy because by now the Houthis had spreaded to a lot of part of Yemen. They had the full tribal support and Houthis became very powerful. And he was the leader of Houthis, Abdul Malik al-Houthi. Now another thing that happened during this time in Yemen was that al-Qaeda started spreading in the south part of Yemen. So in north part Houthis were spreading and in south part al-Qaeda was spreading. And why al-Qaeda found it very easy to spread was because the military was very weak. And also military was also busy fighting the Houthis in the north. So al-Qaeda started spreading at a very fast pace. And this is the situation in 2013. So we have the northern part which is taken control of by the Houthis, and we have this yellow part here, small part of this yellow zone which is taken over by the al-Qaeda. And between here we have the military, but it is too weak right now. So Mansour Hadi, what he tried to first do was that he wanted to unite the country and stabilize the country. So there were 6 provinces in Yemen and he told all the factions, all the 6 provinces that you will be given greater autonomy but please unite as a one country so that we can stabilize the country. But it was not possible because al-Houthi was very powerful and he did not want that only one part, that is 1/6 part he will get in terms of governance, because he wanted greater participation in government. And almost 40% Shia population, 35 to 40% Shia population of Yemen had started supporting the Houthis. So next step was, he said there will be no more talks and we will take our right with guns. And therefore the military was occupied on 2 fronts. And therefore taking its advantage, because military was fighting the Houthis in the north and the al-Qaeda in the south. So the Houthis, they took over Sana'a. This was the occupation of Sana'a in June 2014 by the Houthis. This was a big statement. It led to a lot of embarrassment for the president Hadi, Mansour Hadi. So what he did was, he told his military to confront Houthis. But because he shifted all his military to the north to fight the Houthis, al-Qaeda started spreading in the south rapidly because of lack of military and a weak military in the south. And therefore this is the al-Qaeda expansion. So you can see al-Qaeda had spreaded by now to a lot of part in Yemen. So north was very popular, very powerful because of Houthis, and south had very powerful al-Qaeda group. And what happened then was that Mansour Hadi, he was forced to sign an agreement. He was forced to negotiate power with the Houthis. So this is the peace agreement which was signed with the help of United Nations. United Nations had mediated a peace agreement between the Houthis and the government of Yemen under the leadership of Mansour Hadi. So there was greater autonomy which was given to Houthis and also greater participation in the government. But it was a big embarrassment that the elected government of a country was forced to negotiate with a terrorist group which wanted to uproot the government. So it was a big embarrassment for Mansour Hadi. Also, there was a challenge that Houthis, since they had become very powerful with the support of Iran, so they will expand further. Therefore, Mansour Hadi wanted to prevent the further rise of Houthi rebels. And for that, he made a plan. So if you recall that as soon as Mansour Hadi had came to power, he had removed Ahmar as the chief of army and he had instilled Ahmad Awad bin Mubarak as the chief of army. So Mubarak was nominated as the prime ministerial candidate of Yemen. But again, it was not possible because the Houthis had rejected his PM candidacy. And because they felt that he will take side of the president. He is a loyalist of the president Mansour Hadi. So they rejected the constitution also and also the new federal government also, which they had agreed to accept under the peace deal that was mediated by the UN. Now, Ahmad Mubarak, he was kidnapped, and after he was kidnapped, Houthis wanted their own person as the prime minister of Yemen. And Realizing that the situation is not longer in his control, Mansur Hadi finally resigned because he was put under house arrest by the Houthi rebels and he could no longer take on the powerful Houthis who had the full backing of Iran. But somehow he escaped to the southern town of Aden in 2015, and from the Aden he escaped to Saudi Arabia. Now, with the help of Saudi Arabia, right after 2 months, in January 2015 he had escaped, and in March 2015, with the help of Saudi Arabia, he launched Operation Decisive Storm. So Operation Decisive Storm is that Saudi Arabia will take the help of whoever possible, that is USA, UK and all these countries, surrounding countries like Sudan, etc., and they will bomb the Houthis in Yemen. So Saudi Arabia started bombing Yemen at a very fast pace, and all the Houthi areas were targeted. But what happens is, so there is a proxy war. Now Iran versus Saudi Arabia. So from Saudi Arabia is supporting Mansur Hadi, loyalists, and Iran is supporting Houthis. There is a proxy war that started. And on one side there was the Houthis, and on another side there was the loyalist of the Mansur Hadi, which were supported by 10 countries, not just Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Sudan, US, UK, France, Egypt, Morocco, Senegal, they all were on one side. But all of these countries were not supporting militarily, some were supporting politically. So that was the fight, and it has been going on from 2015. So Houthis, they are the Shia group, they are backed by Iran, and on one side you have the and they tried to overthrow the Yemen government, which is a Sunni government, which is supported by 10 countries. Now, Saudi Arabia, it began bombing at a very fast pace at the Houthi dominated areas. Because of that, there were thousands of people who got killed. Like there were bombing on hospitals, schools, banks. So there were a lot of civilian casualties, which led to a lot of human rights violations. Like for example, in August 18, 2015, the seaport of al-Ahmar was bombed, and this port is central to the food supplies of Yemen, and because of that the food supplies completely disrupted and there was mass starvation. Because of that, thousands of people were killed because of starvation, and there were a lot of articles in news. The world media got active. The media, however, gave very little coverage to Yemen because media was very much involved in Syria, number one. Second, the Houthis were seen as the villains, and therefore media thought it was only appropriate that the Houthis are killed or the bombing of Yemen continues. And the third reason was that because America was involved in the fight and there were human rights violations, like for example civilians were being killed, so America tried to put pressure on media to not cover the Yemen war. And Yemen war is said to be one of the biggest man-made disasters of 21st century. And even I feel surprised a lot of times when I discuss Yemen war with students, they have not even heard about it. They have heard about the Syria war, but nobody has heard about the Yemen war, which has been going on for the past 6 years. And more importantly, last 2 years, there has been an escalated war. So US, why it supported Saudi Arabia? Because US has no enemyship with the Houthis. There is no bad blood between US and the Houthis. So why US is supporting Saudi Arabia? Because US supplies arms and ammunition to Saudi Arabia. It has been doing so since the World War II, and it is a good source of profit for the United States. In fact, 1/3 of all the arms and ammunition exports is done by US. And in the Middle East, 40% of the weapons which the Middle East buys it from the United States. Saudi Arabia bought its maximum weapons from the year 2011 to 2015, according to SIPRI, which is Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Saudi Arabia bought maximum weapons from United States of America. In the year 2015, just 1 year, where the Yemen war was at its peak, USA sold more than 20 billion worth of ships, helicopters, missile defense to Saudi Arabia. Some of them include the powerful F-15 aircrafts and Abrams tanks, which were used by Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen. And also US provided Saudi Arabia with the KC-135 Stratotankers, which are the refilling tankers for the aircraft. So if the Saudi planes, aircrafts, they bomb Yemen and they feel shortage of the bombs, then these Stratotankers, they refuel the bombs. So one more reason why America got into it was because of the America-Iran nuclear deal. Now America wanted to control Iran because Iran is enemy of Saudi Arabia and America is friend of Saudi Arabia. So America signed Iran nuclear deal, which prevented Iran from making a nuclear bomb. Because if Iran gets a nuclear bomb, then it is detrimental or very counterproductive to Saudi Arabia interests, and it will act as a deterrent. So America forced Iran to undergo nuclear disarmament, that is not make nuclear bombs, and in return America promised Iran that it will lift some of the economic sanctions that it had imposed on Iran. So this is what happened. And what happened was, there was another reason why USA was supporting Saudi Arabia and involved in this fight. Saudi Arabia during the Cold War period had helped America to fight communism in Russia. It spread in China and other Southeast Asian countries. And also Yemen, as you recall, the southern part of Yemen, the southeast part of Yemen was a strong hub of al-Qaeda. And since 9/11, America had made it a point to fight al-Qaeda wherever it can. Now there was a lot of pressure on America from human rights groups because it was accused of war crimes, because a lot of people were being killed because of famine and also preventable diseases like that. So America put pressure on Saudi Arabia to stop bombing, especially at public places like banks, schools, universities, etc. However, the bombing has been unabated thus far. And according to United Nations report, close to 4 lakh children are malnourished, and close to 10,000 people have been killed, and 10,000 children have died from preventable diseases in just 1 year in Yemen, and 30 lakh people have become refugees. They have been uprooted from their places and they are forced to leave their homes. So what has USA achieved in Yemen war? Nothing. Sana'a, which is the capital, is still under the possession of the Houthis, very powerful Iran backed Houthis, and there is a pressure within USA now, especially by the opposing diplomats, to stop the supplies to Saudi Arabia and put pressure on Saudi Arabia to stop the bombing. So there is a no end to the war thus far. It has been 2 years since there is a full-blown confrontation, and the bombing of Yemen continues and the starvation of Yemen continues. It has turned into another Syria. In Syria also there has been no end to the conflict. Now before I end the Yemen war, I want to pay my tributes to General V.K. Singh. There were a lot of Indians who were trapped in this war, and General V.K. Singh, he did not care about his own life. He went to Yemen, and in the aircrafts of Indian Air Force, he brought back thousands of Indians who were stranded in the war-torn Yemen. So I want to pay my tributes to General V.K. Singh for his exceptional bravery, and this was called Operation Raahat. It was in April 2015. So this was the Yemen war, and it still continues. I hope you understood the topic. It is very important for especially for your UPSC mains. Thank you very much.